Hello friends! Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Nuclear Revenge. This episode contains one long story, so buckle up and get ready. I want to also note that this episode is a nuclear revenge episode, and what separates it from pro-revenge is the illegal acts or violence that these stories may contain, so keep that in mind. With that said, I hope you enjoy this one story today, and subscribe for future videos. This story is titled, Entitled Mother at a Ukrainian Beach Stumbles onto two creative sociopaths who deal out some sweet revenge. A few people told me to post this one on Nuclear Revenge, so hopefully it covers all the rules. So I recently came back home for a visit, and around the table, the subject came to previous holidays, which made me remember this little story of horror, so I thought you guys may like it. Before going into the story, I want to say that I fully understand that me and my aunt did a shitty borderline sociopathic thing, but my shame over the years has degraded. Also, want to give you a heads up that the dialogue in the story is from as best as I could remember, and also translated from Russian. I also want to mention that this was technically very dangerous, and there have been people who died from this or seriously got hurt. On to the story. So this happened a very, very long time ago. Around the time when I was about 9 or 10, so old enough to develop a spiteful mindset. At the time, me and my family, which included me, my mother, my grandmother, and my mother's sister, went on holidays to Ukraine around the Black Sea, which is where this story took place. Every morning, around 8 AM, we would head towards the beaches, as they were always full and impossibly hot by the time it was midday, so our plan was always to go to the beach and leave by around 11, when it got so hot that you would cook in your own sweat. So on this particular day, we made it to the beach a little earlier, which meant that we could pick out some of the best parts of the beach and set up our blankets before new amounts of glass and trash were made on the beach. For some background, while the Black Sea is lovely, the beaches around the area are only for the more experienced who know how to avoid the trash areas. Often, the beaches were full of broken glass bottles, cigarettes, needles, and many other dangerous things, and thus, it was highly advised that you wear foot protection when traveling from point A to point B. So it was me and the gal crew. Now, about that spot. We found the perfect spot, and laid out our things and towels, and checked for any bottles or debris, and we were overjoyed to find none. We watched the beach fill up with people, and eventually, around 10, we noticed that a very large woman with 3 kids approached us. We were in a spot right between the sea and the entrance, under a big umbrella that was there for public use. She towered over us. There were lots of people on the beach, but still a ton of space available around to sit, which was very surprising. This woman towered over us and loudly groaned and complained. Let's refer to her as Entitled Mom, and her entitled kids, which were all 3 boys. The entitled mom said, "You are in our spot." All of us blinked unanimously in confusion. My mom even started laughing a little, asking, "Are you having a heat stroke, or are you for real?" The entitled mom loudly gasped and started kicking our towels and stuff. She screeched, "You are in our spot. We've been sitting here for the last 3 days, and now your fat asses are taking my spot. And because of you, my kids are burning their feet waiting for you cows to move." My mother's sister had burst into laughter, replying, "Well, whoever the cow in the scenario is, it's definitely not us." While this was happening, I was building a small sand pile. Her devil spawns suddenly started pushing me and taking some of my sandcastle stuff and bending it, to which I got up and pushed him away and grabbed my shovel and then hit him with it, telling him to bugger off. I was usually a well-behaved kid, but if I ever seen someone try to break my stuff, I would cripple them, as we weren't the richest and I was protective over my things. The mother gasped and started crying out for me to move, which everyone in the surrounding area glanced at us, but it's Ukraine, so no one cares. I love my people, and besides, there was no one to call for help, because police or guards around the beach are not common nor wanted. My mother has stood up to her fully now and told her, "Take your big and ugly ass somewhere else before the 5 of us collectively will cripple you." I know it sounds weird writing it out, but in our language, it sounds much better than what we said. The entitled mom straight up tries to slap my mother, to which I then responded and took a plastic shovel to her son's eye with sand in it and started jabbing it as his siblings try to push me away, but I spit in one's face and kicked the other. All start crying, and a few people shout out for her to shut her brats up. The mother then stops midway and grabs her spawns and yells at us. She says, The second you bitches move, I'm taking this spot. I know there were a few more profanities, but I don't remember every word or the conversation fully. Now, mind you, there was no one to call help for, as the lifeguards were not evenly spaced out and miles away, so we decided to have a miniature revenge. My mother tries to tell me off for assaulting the boys, but my grandmother defends me and said something along the lines of, "Don't be mad at her, she was defending you." To which we then all agree to forget and have fun. Now, me and my mother's sister were a lot closer to being siblings than her and my mother. She was about 10 years older than me, so she was like 19 when I was 9. We went swimming in turns, never leaving the towels and our stuff never unattended. After about 40 minutes, my mother and grandmother tells us to pack things up, as they were gonna get one last dip as we had ours. So me and my aunt realize we have a window of opportunity. The revenge. While taking their last dip, me and my aunt see that the entitled mother is eyeing our spot, and we had an idea. My aunt was just as petty-minded and asshole-minded. She told me to have a quick look around for broken bottles in the area. I knew exactly what she was planning. She told me not to touch them by hand and use my shovel and my little claw thing to pick them up. I took my bucket and my spatula and started running around for about 15 minutes while she packed everything, and I started picking up glass shards and bottle shards with my spatula, and all the cigarette butts and the disgusting things that I could find, which was not that hard. I piled them into the bucket and ran back to my aunt. When she saw the full bucket, she told me to be careful and make sure that no one was watching, and try to help hide what she was doing. We knew that my mom and grandmother would still take a long time. Turning our backs towards the entitled mom, my aunt started to take out the glass shards and bottles. Then, we started spreading them around to specific areas, as it was not uncommon for people to bury their trash, so no one paid attention to it. We started covering them with sand, making sure that the sharp parts of the glass were pointed up, and covered that whole area as much as we could, while making it look like we were building a sandcastle. My aunt told me to go meet my grandmother and my mom, as we saw them getting out of the sea and drying, and she told me to take them around a slightly different route, so they wouldn't step on our little booby trap. I watched my aunt get up, and the entitled mother pretty much shoved her out of the way and yelled at her to move, to which she just smiled and told her to have a lovely day, as the 5 of us crossed paths. We slowly started to head a little bit away, and my aunt stops midway, where there are less people, to pretend to put on a few things and stall for time so we could watch. I saw the entitled mother hastily putting her towel over the sand without checking it, which was a big mistake, and slops her ass down only to yell and howl in pain as she sat directly onto the broken glass shards that we hid, cutting up her towel and her leg entirely. One of the brats, who had also tried to break my things, stepped onto the shards and cut his foot, and started yelling and crying and breaking down, and the woman yelled in pain. A few people started being inconvenienced by her, and others checked out what happened and tried to help, but the woman screamed profanities. She started rolling around, and all the cigarette butts and seaweed that we had also placed started sticking to her wound and skin, and eventually engulfs her in the trash. These are the types of things that people would be collecting in biohazard suits. My grandmother was horrified, thinking that we were also sitting on this, but my mother looked at the 2 of us, knowing that we did this. She could not say a word and started shoving us away from the beach in a hurry to get out. Me and my aunt started laughing as my grandmother said, "Oh, praise the Lord that we didn't get cut like that woman. It was the grace of God that saved us." Me and my aunt just continued laughing as my mother took us to the side and told us off. My mom threatened to punish me, but we were on holidays, so she couldn't ground me. My aunt took the blame and told me it was worth it. We sat down in a cafe to get some drinks and lunch, and an hour and a half later, we saw paramedics started coming towards the beach by maybe around 1 or 2 p.m. The medical care in the Ukraine at holiday locations is piss poor, and the only way you'd get a doctor helping you is if you were dying, if that. It was also in the dead heat of day, so the medical paramedics would be too lazy to go onto the beach, and no one usually will come out to help until the sun came down. It was safe to assume that this time, the paramedics came for the entitled mother, and that was a relief moment we had, as we realized this woman was basically rolling in a cesspool of illnesses for at least half an hour before any help arrived, baking under the hot sun. We've most likely ruined this woman's holiday, and have most likely put her out of commission for a long time, as those bottles and that hazardous sand and cigarette butts would have definitely given her an infection. Paramedics and doctors also need bribes there, so this help would have probably cost her 500 euros in bribes only, without the cost of any treatment. There are no cameras around, no people who cared, and no proof that we did it, and no way of ever finding us. Hopefully next time that cow learns some manners. Lesson of the story is, don't pick a fight with someone and underestimate their mindsets, because you may just stumble onto sociopaths who will get back at you for being such a delight. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed this one story today. Let me know in the comments if this story deserved the Nuclear Revenge badge, or if it went too far. I want to know what you think. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. See you guys in the next one.